Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. This is part 2 to Why the Jews. So, if you're following, what's going on in world news today, or the last couple of days, there was these awesome new chants that were or slogans chanted in England. Deaf to the IDF. Like open anti-Semitism is okay now. You still have a mayoral race which is questionable. You know what happens next, and certainly Mamdani is someone who's unabashful socialist, unapologetic socialist. He's someone who's very clear about his stances on Israel. He wants to defund Israel, any connection to Israel. He wants to BDS Israel. He believes in that. He believes in defunding the police. He wants to hire social workers to send them to crime scenes to kind of like talk people off doing their bad crimes. And what we were trying to do, over the last couple of sessions is to have a conversation about anti-Semitism. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about how anti-Zionism is often anti-Semitism. I think it is possible to be anti-Zionistic and not be anti-Semitic, but it's almost impossible. You have to be super, super clear. 99% of people cannot make that distinction, and therefore it ends up being the same thing. So we're talking about why the Jews. Why are our people singled out for the worst kind of hatred? And last week we gave a whole bunch of reasons. We spoke about the different explanations of anti-Semitism. We spoke about the economics, we spoke about the chosen people, we spoke about the scapegoat theory, outsiders, deicide, that we killed Jesus. We spoke about race, which is actually the first time that race became a real issue for anti-Semitism. Was more modern. It's in your DNA, it's in the blood. It's in your very soul, the very nature of what it means to be a Jew is something that has to be eradicated. If you look at the background over here, these are the 1,000 different reasons. If you were to ask people to fill the whiteboards to why people hate Jews, they'll come up with thousands of different reasons, and therefore it's all irrational. And therefore we're not talking about something that makes any sense. We can't pinpoint why people hate Jewish people because it keeps morphing and changing from generation to generation. We've seen that before. We know that historically, when anti-Semitism becomes a reality for our society, that's generally the canary in the coal mine, the beginning of the end of a particular type of civilization. If we're seeing people feeling comfortable to come out and speak about it openly here today in 2025, it's very telling about the moral rot that we see in our country. And instead of talking about, what makes us so unique and so special through Jewish sources, I want to speak about it through the lens of Adolf Hitler himself. Because the people that hate you really have a deeper understanding about who and what you are. And the mistake that we make about a guy like Adolf Hitler is thinking that Adolf Hitler, he's the bad guy, and the bad guy is the guy who's wearing the veiled black hood. He's got the red or yellow eyes, the Sith. They're the evil characters that are lurching behind in the darkness and the shadow and so on and so forth. But that's not the case. In reality, a very bad person can look like a upstanding, normal guy. Like Zohar Mamdani, I don't think he thinks he's bad. He has some horrible policies. But he himself, he believes he's a social justice warrior. He's fighting for the good of the city and the good of the people. And there was an article, I think, on Shabbat in the Wall Street Journal about how a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City is averaging at $5,500 for a small apartment in the city, which is absolutely insane. It shouldn't cost $75,000 to rent a small bedroom. That's a mortgage already. It makes no sense. So there's no question there's an affordability issue. There's no question there's inflationary issues in the city. No question there's issues. But breaking down capitalism and saying capitalism is the worst system and therefore it has to be changed, it has to be destroyed, it has to be gutted, neutered, and sent away is not going to solve the problems. We know historically all the policies that he wants to champion are ones that end up ruining and destroying a city. The NYPD today issued a statement that if Mamdani wins, there's going to be a mass exodus of NYPD officers from New York City. That no one's going to want to work here. It's going to be a crime zone. It's going to be horrible. Yeah, they're saying it's like the Gotham City New York City will turn into Gotham City. So maybe we'll find our Black Knight, our Dark Knight, and there'll be a Batman soon. But the point is that anti-Semitism is irrational. There is no real argument you can make to try to explain why. But let's try to understand it from one of the greatest evil people on the planet, because he was very articulate about why he hated Jews. It wasn't just random blind rage. I just hate anti-Semitic. And you just look at a Jew and he hated Jews. There was a deep philosophy behind his ideas. Right? And he said as follows: he said, the struggle for world domination will be fought entirely between us, between Germans and Jews. All else is a facade and illusion. Behind England stands Israel, and behind France and behind the United States. Even when we have driven the Jew out of Germany, he remains our world enemy. What is he talking about? This is like, what's he saying over here? Unclear. Right, but he does expand, and he explains as follows. He says, do you now appreciate the depth of our National Socialist movement? Right, by the way, the Nazis were socialists. It starts out as a socialist project. We're going to get the people to think very deeply about all the gripes, all the things that are not going right with society. And the people you naturally are going to come after are the people that are the scapegoat, the minority of people in that particular place, and take advantage of them and bully them and point the finger saying they're the cause of your suffering. Now remember, Jews are disproportionately successful. It's hard to explain why. From a spiritual place, I would argue that the reason why we're successful is that in the exile, because remember, we are exiled, we are not in our homeland, we are not where we're meant to be. This is a experiment, if you would call it that. Jewish people are out of the fishbowl, so to speak. We're not in the land of Israel. And our success, in spite of exile, in spite of all the challenges of being Jewish, is miraculous. That we're successful. Makes no sense. That success is supposed to point to the fact that, hey, there's a God who is guiding, leading, and protecting these people. It's something unique about them. I mean, again, like this whole thing with Iran is insane. Iran is 9 times the size, population-wise, of Israel. Okay, forget about. I don't even know how much bigger the territory is. It's bigger than Texas. Iran's ginormous. Okay, it's a huge country, and the fact that only 200 jets and some Mossad agents were able to penetrate this country and completely rip it apart. It's obvious right now that the regime is falling apart. There are defectors daily happening in the IRGC. God willing, in the next couple of weeks, we're thinking to have maybe less than a month to survive, and you'll have a massive overturn in the Middle East. Right? Imagine that. Like, who would have thought that Iran, the big bad wolf, is gone, right? And that you'll have a whole entire country now with that will recognize Israel as well. That will want to be part of the Abraham Accords. Syria today made it very clear that they're willing to go ahead and recognize Israel's sovereignty and right to the Golan Heights. Forget about accepting Israel as a country, but they'll give them back the Golan Heights on condition that they won't contest the Golan Heights, on condition that Israel recognizes this new government and Syria as a valid government, and withdraws from all areas they took over the last, since October 7th, which is like the Golan Heights and other areas around the Golan Heights. Of course they're going to do it. It's a no-brainer. If we make peace with Syria, we make peace with Lebanon. You make peace with Syria and Lebanon, you have a stronger peace with Jordan, you have a stronger peace with Egypt, because they desperately want peace with Israel. And now the only question is, do you have an Iraq and Iran? If Iran follows suit, that means Iraq is. And then you have Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Like, can you imagine a Middle East where it's safer to be Jewish than it is in America? How insane is that? And it just happened like that. Miraculous. But Adolf Hitler is talking about something different. He says, do you now appreciate the depth of our National Socialist movement? Can there be anything greater and all more comprehending? Those who see in National Socialism nothing more than a political movement know scarcely anything of it. It is more even than a religion. It is the will to create mankind anew. Well, what was he trying to create? What kind of mankind anew was he trying to create? What was his movement about? It was just about economics? No. They refer to me as an uneducated barbarian, he said. Yes, we are barbarians, being unapologetic. We want to be the barbarians. It is an honorable title to us. We shall rejuvenate the world. The world is near its end. Adolf Hitler, what's he talking about? Was he crazy? No. He's actually trying to explain something very powerful. The Nazis were very big into Viking history, like Valhalla and Odin, like they were all into the old gods. And they and the truth is, in many ways, Adolf Hitler was an anti-Christianity. He knew he couldn't fight the church, so he didn't. But in his philosophies, he made it very clear: Providence has ordained that I should be the greatest liberator of humanity. Liberating humanity from what?
For religion.
I am freeing man from the restraints of an intelligence that has taken charge, from the dirty and the degrading self-mortification of a false vision called conscience and morality, and from the demands of freedom and personal independence, which only a very few can bear. What's he talking about over here? He's like, I don't want to live with moral conscience. I want to do whatever I want to do. A barbarian is free to do whatever he wants to do. This state that we're in right now, right, is a weakened state, not an ideal state of man. The Ten Commandments have lost their validity. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It is a blemish like circumcision. Right? Fascinating. Right? So he believed that Judaism was a virus that overtook, the minds of the West. The idea that people spoke about Judeo-Christian values, those values themselves, he despised, and he saw that as weakening as weakening man. Now, who was the first group of people to fight Jews about circumcision? Anyone know?
The Greeks.
The Greeks, right? The Greeks were anti-circumcision. What were they fighting against? The idea that pagans, were fighting against circumcision. It's a weird thing, but they were fighting against monotheism because they didn't want monotheism. They wanted to be free to do whatever they wanted. They didn't want to deal with the conscience of morality. Yeah.
During this time, wasn't it with Sigmund Freud and Anderson were all coming out with their psychology?
Yeah, for sure. It's totally a part of that. This is all part of atheism, the new atheism that was coming out into the world.
But it looks like it's linked with Judaism, but it's also what he would consider modern psychology at that time. It's also very
It's definitely part of it, but he saw the weakening of man, the Aryan perfect man, beast, the strongest, most powerful organism on the planet as a human being, and it is weakened by the ideas of consciousness and circumcision and morality. And therefore, in order for me to get rid of the forget about the bastard children of monotheism, Christianity and Islam, just get rid of the mother and you finish the whole thing. And therefore, he saw it as his duty to go ahead and liberate the world. This was part of the Hitler Youth song. We are the joyous Hitler Youth. We do not need any Christian virtue. Our leader is our savior. The Pope and the Rabbi shall be gone. We want to be pagans once again. They sang this. This is their nigunim. This is what they're singing. And this idea over here, in natural order, the classes are people superimposed one on another in strata. Instead of living as neighbors, this order we shall return to as soon as the sequel of liberalism have been removed. Meaning, if you take a lion out of the jungle, right? Take it out of its Kruger National Park and you put it into the Central Park, zoo. What happens if you try to put that lion back into Kruger National Park? It's barely a lion; it won't survive. So he's arguing that there's a what's the word again? Nietzsche said it. It's like strength to power. Like it's survival of the fittest is what he said, right? And therefore, in his world, a man has been reduced because of religion. These ideas of turn the other cheek and be soft and morality weaken humanity, and barbarism and the mankind being free to unleash its want, its will on the world is the ideal state that we're creating because he was an atheist, right? And therefore, we want to go back to that primal state that you can be in. Yeah.
So why didn't he go after the Pope and after all the...
He would have, right? He would have. Now,
That's morality too,
remember that when Stalingrad happened and the 1944, when the Nazis were pushed back by the Soviets, Hitler had to make a choice. Do I send troops to the front lines and reinforce the battle so I can win the war? Or do I send 500,000 Hungarian Jews to the gas chambers? What did he choose? Why? because he understood that the real enemy were the Jews, not the Russians. And therefore, for him, in his mind, he was liberating humanity by killing as many Jews as possible. That was the goal of the war. He understood that if you kill morality, the source of moral teaching in the planet, you get rid of those pesky Jews that keep reminding me about all these crazy things, circumcision. I'm going to withhold sexuality and reduce it and focus on spiritual pursuits. This is an abomination to the barbarian. But if I get rid of the Jews at their core for what they stand for, right, we're better off. By the way, why do you think the Muslims hate Jews? Is it because of this? It's the same idea. We're a constant reminder to both the Christians and the Muslims that there's a possibility that their beliefs are false and wrong. Over here, it was a different kind of a false belief. Remember that anyone who has the power to do one thing has to have the power to do the opposite. Hitler was someone who was chasing the world of its Jews. He had plans to go into the Middle East. He had plans to go, he made those, the pact with the Muslim Brotherhood, you're all familiar with it. You know, he wanted to go ahead and do whatever he could to kill as many Jews anywhere and everywhere around the world. Yeah?
Rabbi, do we believe Hitler had Jewish blood? Because that level of conviction, I mean, Jews are the only ones
We don't know that he had Jewish blood. I mean, there's some, I think I read a long time ago, he may have had like a Jewish great-grandfather. His wife, Eva Braun, was definitely Jewish. But he was not Jewish. Certainly not halakha Jewish. She was.
His wife was Jewish?
Yeah.
That's the woman he married like 10 days before dying.
Before he shot them in the head, yeah. Eva Braun, we have her brush, we have her DNA, so we know that she was Jewish.
Did he know she was Jewish?
I imagine so. But if you were a barbarian, he didn't care about the Jews as much as he cared about the philosophy. And he understood that if you kill the Jews and you get rid of you'll get rid of the Jews, you'll get rid of the philosophy as well. Right? So this is what he says. He says if only one country, for whatever reason, tolerates the Jewish family in it, that family will become the germ center, right? The der Belzenherd, which is like a bacteria for fresh sedition. If one little Jewish boy survives without any Jewish education, with no synagogue and no Hebrew school, it is in his soul. No matter how far a Jew goes, the pintel yid, as they say, will always emerge. You can't escape it. It's in your DNA. It's in your soul. So he understood deep down that no matter what, how far you are removed as a Jew from your Judaism, you can't escape your Jewishness, and it'll find it'll rear its ugly head. It'll come out somehow. Hitler understood something unique about Jews that most Jews don't understand. That you're driven by something more than just money and power and greed and pleasure. There's something more that each of you are looking for. He understood it, and he was willing to lose the war to make his point clear. Like, you got to get rid of every single one of them, no matter where they are on the planet. They're gonna come out and they're gonna infect the world with these ideas. Even if there had never been a synagogue or a Jewish school or the Old Testament, the Jewish spirit would exist and exert its influence. It has been there from the beginning, and there is no Jew, not a single one, who does not personify it. He didn't care if you were religious, not religious, Hasidic, Zionist, secular, didn't really matter. At the core, a Jew is a Jew. You can't escape it, no matter what. There's something about you that expresses these deep ideas of morality, and it was in his best interest to go ahead and wipe it off the planet, and so on and so forth. So therefore, he came to the final solution. You just got to get rid of all of them. That was the goal. Final solution: kill every single Jew on the planet, and we will win the war. We will be able to be free from these things that hold me back. Circumcision on man's body, consciousness on man's soul. These are the things that he hated. And you have to ask yourself, why? Last quote: the heaviest blow which ever struck humanity was Christianity. Bolshevism is Christianity's legitimate child. Both are inventions of the Jew. Now, our rabbis tell us that the word sinah or Sinai, right, have a deep correlation here. Now, every other people becomes a people when they, as a group, coalesce in a particular country. They take on a particular type of history, language, and culture, and they become a people. You, my friends, are part of a group of people that defy all logic. We did not become a people in the land. We did not all speak one language. And we're part of 12 tribes. Right? Whatever makes a people, you, my friends, are not. You were made in the desert, in a place called on a mountain called Mount Sinai. You accepted a bunch of ideals and beliefs. You accepted them, and that's what we have: shared core values, moral principles. And as a result of that, we were going to be hated. The rabbis say the word Sinai has the same word sin'ah, hatred. Remember, the word anti-Semitism was created for Jews. The word genocide was created by a guy named Professor Lemnik in 1945, a Polish professor who spoke about this concept of that there was no hatred and such a deep loathing of one group of people where you want to wipe them off the planet. That word genocide was invented for Jews. It didn't exist before 1945. You could look up the etymology of the word. He invented the word. Right? That's the kind of hatred we're talking about. Where does it come from? Why is it that every single place you go to, there are people that follow you and they just hate you? We're different than everybody else. It's not the same. Okay, this is Herman Rauschning. He's a guy who left the German party but still hated the Jews. He said it is against their own insoluble problem of being human that the dull and base in humanity are in revolt and anti-Semitism. Judaism, nevertheless, together with Hellenism and Christianity, is an inalienable component of our Christian Western civilization, the eternal call to Sinai, against which humanity again and again rebels. He saw the truth that, bottom line is, that this is a religious idea. These are spiritual concepts that the world can't escape. And therefore, when we're talking about why the Jews and anti-Semitism, we're not talking about a normal kind of hatred. We're talking about some sort of spiritual malady, some type of spiritual sickness. It is inescapable. It's going to happen over and over again because if society itself has not elevated itself and we have not figured out a way of caring for society, society will often rebel against its Jews first. I would say to you from a spiritual place because we have not upheld our bargain, right, with the world. He says it over here as follows: I had motives for not wanting the world to have meaning. Consequently, I assumed that it had none. For myself, the philosophy of the meaningless was essentially an instrument of liberation. This is what most universities have been teaching for the last 40 years in this country, right? Meaningless was essentially an instrument of liberation. From a certain system of morality, we objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom, right? I want to do whatever I want to do. Don't tell me what to do. But you, my friends, are supposed to be a light unto the nations. You're supposed to bring peace, the concepts of peace and freedom, of monotheism and justice and family and education and charity. The barbarians would say, go against the grain of what it means to be a barbarian. A barbarian sees what he wants and he takes it. There is no possession. There is no sacred. There is no spiritual. It's all about hedonism and satiating the lust of the body, the most base part of the self. Right? Mankind, East and West, Christian and Muslim, accepted the Jewish conviction that there is only one God. Today, it is polytheism that is so difficult to understand. That is so unthinkable. Do you understand that? We live in a world where polytheism makes absolutely no sense. That was not the case. We changed the world. Your great-great-grandparents changed the way humanity sees its relationship with itself. The idea that we no longer, when we look at people that talk about like polytheism, we're like, you're nuts, like that's like some ancient cult, like who believes in that stuff, right? Most people on the planet today are monotheists. That accomplishment is an expression of your family's belief for centuries. And in spite of all the challenge, in spite of all the difficulties, somehow we prevailed. But look at what other people have said about us. For example, like John Adams, his famous quote, in spite of the Bolingbroke and Voltaire, I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. They are the most glorious nation that ever inhabited the earth. The Romans and their empire were but a bauble in comparison to the Jews. They have given religion to 3/4 of the globe and have influenced the affairs of mankind more and more happily than any other nation, ancient or modern. John Adams, right? Or let's look at Paul Johnson, right? Famous European historian, Christian historian. He says, certainly the world without Jews would have been a radically different place. To them, we owe the idea of equality before the law, both divine and human, of sanctity of life and the dignity of human person, to the individual conscious and so of personal redemption, of the collective conscious and so of social responsibility, of peace as an abstract ideal and love as the foundation of justice, and many other items which constitute the basic moral furniture of the human mind. Without the Jews, it might have been a much emptier place. You know why? Because humanity would have killed itself. They would destroy themselves because it's all about war and power and more stuff. Yes?
Didn't Hitler also keep, I forget what the pill is called, but to all the soldiers he would feed them these pills, right?
Like suicide pills?
No, not suicide pills. I forget the word.
I mean, he himself was on.
It was something that.
It wasn't that. He was on liquid cocaine.
Keep them pregnant, it would
raise that would be empathetic. It would cut it raise with the.
Yeah, this is exactly what Hamas did on October 7th. They took, I'm not sure I forgot the name of the drug, they took the drug, they did the same exact thing. Yeah, it makes you crazy, it lowers your inhibition, and you go out and do whatever you want to do. But you have to become a barbarian to do those kind of things. You have to be crazy, to remove all moral consciousness. Okay, the real cause of anti-Semitism. This is Dennis Prager and Joseph Plushkin from a book called Why the Jews. We spoke about this a few weeks ago. He says, from his earliest days, the raison d'etre of Judaism has been to change the world for the better. That is what Judaism wants. We want to make the world a much better place. This attempt to change the world, to challenge the gods, religious or secular, of the societies around them, and to make moral demands upon others, has constantly been a source of tension between Jews and non-Jews. We now understand why so many non-Jews have regarded the mere existence of Jews, no matter how few, as terribly threatening. The mere existence of Jews, with their different values and allegiances, constituted a threat to prevailing order. We are a threat to the prevailing order. We challenge status quo. The idea that a Muslim mayor is running right now for the first time, and he's being explicitly anti-Israel, is another way of him saying he's anti the Jews. Why is he anti the Jews? Because he understands that once you get rid of the Jews of the city, everything else is open, free. No more hurdles. You can make real change in this country. You want to bring more socialists in the country, you want to make more change in this country, you want to make Sharia law, just get rid of the Jews first here, and you'll start. Okay, that's how this goes. Now, we have like these individuals, who have come through, like Hitler, and he recognized all the good that the Jews potentially have, but his reaction was different than Adams and Paul Johnson, right? Their reaction is different. They all recognize something unique about their moral contribution, but the way in which Paul Johnson and John Adams react is very different than Hitler. Hitler recognizes these truths as well, coming from a different lens. Remember, the potential is always going to be there. They each see the same thing, but one comes to a very different conclusion than the other. Johnson and Adams see it as, wow, this is awesome, because think about where humanity would be. Hitler sees this as a limiting factor to human potential, and therefore he wants to set humanity free, right? He's super clear that he's doing the right thing, to the point where his convictions allow him to commit the worst tragedies, the worst horrors on humanity. The concept of crimes against humanities was also a concept that was invented for World War II, for the Jews. A human being can survive anyhow as long as a proper why. That was Friedrich Nietzsche, right? So, yes?
Rabbi, is there something we can do differently where our enemies wouldn't see us as a threat?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Or as a threat?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Isn't this the quote that Hirsch Goldberg pulled on the stone for saying?
That's the Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
But it's a different book.
Yeah, this is different. So he said that, why the Jews is the question that we started off with. Like, why are we targeted? Why are we hated? And so on and so forth. Okay? But if you don't understand the why we do what we do as Jews, or what it means to be a Jew, then you'll never understand the anti-Semitism, and certainly you won't understand how to survive the anti-Semitism. That's what I want to talk about. Like, how do you survive this stuff? So when you have anti-Semitism, right, and anti-Semitism plus ignorance, that equals, I'm not sure why this is not working. There you go. Plus ignorance equals assimilation. Now, imagine you have, the word is supposed to say assimilation back there. I don't know why that picture is on the wrong slide.
Doesn't it say assassination?
Assimilation.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's like this picture should be This picture and this picture come right after one another.
It looks like a future liberal.
No, it's not. Nice try. Anyway, this picture, imagine someone told you have a daughter who has red hair, and she comes home and she says, Dad, Mom, I went to school, people call me Carrot Top, whatever it is, and like I get all these like gingivitis and whatever it is, and people make all kinds of things, they make fun of me. What would you tell your child to do? Right? The one thing you would not tell them to do is, I have another slide, I'm not sure why it's not coming up over here, but it is the same picture of that little girl, but with black hair. You would never tell her to color her hair, right? Hold on a second. Here you go, right? You wouldn't tell her to dye her hair, right? You wouldn't tell her to assimilate. You would tell her about all the beauty and the wonders about how lucky she is for having red hair, right? You spend time kind of expressing all the the charm and the rarity of that red hair, but you wouldn't ask her to go ahead and change. But when most Jews in America, when they're dealing with anti-Semitism and they have ignorance, they go ahead and they assimilate, right? Assimilation is not the answer, by the way, because we saw that in Germany, where Jews tried assimilating the most, the Reform movement was born in Germany in the 1850s with Moses Mendelssohn. And Jews said, you know what, let's move Shabbat to Sunday. Let's take out the word Israel from the Siddur so that we'll be good Germans, and Germans won't see us as trying to leave. They took out Shema Yisrael from the Siddur because there's any reference to Israel. The early reformers removed it. They brought a pipe organ into the synagogue, and they started dressing like Jews. Moses Mendelssohn and his students. Moses Mendelssohn didn't, lead his orthodoxy, but his students all married goyim. His children all married Christians. They were all out, done. Nothing survived. And in this space that Jews tried to assimilate the most, there were laws that were instituted to prevent them from assimilating. It's kind of weird. So you're better off being a chassid in Williamsburg in a world of anti-Semitism than being some guy who's pretending not to be Jewish, because they'll find you, and you're more of a threat to them than the Hasidic person, right? So ignorance leads to assimilation. Now, this is a T-shirt that I love. I wish I had this one because we know what's going to happen at the bottom of that T-shirt, right? This is all the nations of civilizations, nations that attempted to destroy the Jewish people. You have ancient Egypt, you have the Philistines, you have the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine, the Crusaders, the Spanish Empire, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, and Iran. We know where that's going. Goodbye. Say goodbye to the Ayatollahs and the IRGC. Now the question is, who's next on the list? Which nation is next? Can you foresee a world where underneath Iran it says the US, or Britain, or France, or Germany? Think about that for a minute. What happens to Britain in 10 years from now? Germany in 5 years from now? France in 5 years from now? Think about that for a minute. What happens to those countries? It's happening already. Well, we see, historically, we have a good track record at least. Right? They came, they tried, and they failed. Now, we are the smallest of nations, but with a friend in the highest of places, you got to be very careful, so be very nice. Right? But I love this quote. This is Rav Chaim of Volozhin. He says, when the Jews don't make Kiddush, Gentiles make Havdalah. Right? And that's what we're here to do. We're here to make a Kiddush Hashem. We're here to be individuals that have a very deep understanding of Jewish pride. And the only way you have that is through education. The only way you have that is not through ignorance, through knowledge, through leaning in, becoming a bigger spiritual power plant of morality and holiness. You can't escape it. Think about this. I mean, this is insane. We're talking about 3,300 years of history of people that have been with us. They hate you, and I can't explain why. The Egyptians had anti-Semitism. Before we were a full nation, we were a small family. They were threatened by us. Everywhere we went, it was the same exact story. My question is, well, what are you doing about it? I don't know if Bamdani wins or not, it's not up to me. I could do my thing, go vote, do your thing. But at the end of the day, he wins. This is part of God's plan. Maybe the plan is for us to start preparing to go back to the mothership. Maybe each of us need to stop worrying about being comfortable and start thinking about how we can innovate, how we can become members of a society that are trying to help develop and build a greater, better future. Maybe there's a better future for you than the one that you think you have right now here. I don't know. But I know this much. If you're not leaning into your Jewishness, you're not leaning into understanding where you come from and why you are special and unique, you'll never be able to understand who these people that hate you so much are. You know, yesterday was the Rebbe's Yahrzeit. He passed away, and on Gimel Sivan, Tammuz, Mechila. And you know, he was the one that said that if Hitler was willing to travel the world to kill every single Jew, then we should be willing to travel the world to love every single Jew. Whatever Hitler wanted to do, I want to do the opposite. And that's what motivated so much of Chabad's thinking. And they were so ahead of their time in terms of building spaces for Jews around the world and taking them in and being open and not being judgmental and just being that place of open love and open arms. It's amazing what they did. One man has a power of changing the trajectory of the world. Each of you are unique people that have the power of changing reality in more ways you could possibly imagine. So when we talk about, you know, why the Jews, the question is why be Jewish? And that's the real question you need to start asking yourselves. Well, what does it mean to be a Jew today? How much of my values are my values that were kind of imparted to me by my civilization? How much am I really thinking and challenging where I came from? How much am I really growing spiritually? Do I even have a path of spiritual growth and development? Or do I just allow the world around me to tell me how to think about being Jewish and so on and so forth? Well, you decide. The future of our people depend on you. Wherever we may end up, you know, I don't know where we end up, but I know that the one constant is that the Jews that are able to tell the story of tomorrow are the ones that are never resting on their laurels. They're the ones that are not afraid to ask questions. They're the ones that are not afraid to get up and move. They're the ones that are not afraid to take the hardest route. They're the ones that are able to go ahead and ensure that there's a Jewish future. You come from families that have survived everything that the world has put out against us for the last 3,300 years. The last 2,000 years of crusades, expulsions, pogroms, I mean, like, you could name it, it's horrible. All around the world. So you choose to either fade away, become a cheerleader, or choose to be a main actor. To be a main actor means someone who is educated, someone who is learning daily, someone who is growing, someone who's thinking deeply, someone who's trying and striving for what I would say is spiritual excellence. May we have the zchut of seeing our actions, our small actions, have major impact around the world. May you all recognize that you are unique and that you have a unique ability of making the world a better, greater place. Bezrat Hashem, in that zchut, we will see Mashiach Mamher Mimenu. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Questions, comments?